Very good evening. Before concluding or before presenting my vote of thanks, I would like to present some of the points of United Nations, which was started as a people of United Nations. In the charter, it says it is a people of United Nations with certain important objectives like, say, for example, security, human rights, international law, and that of the social progress and better standard of life. But the question here is the major question of this organization, and through all these 75 years of time, has achieved these objectives or not? It is a major question, and we need to look into that. The United Nations has been one of the controversial institutions, admired by many as well as that reviled by others. This organization has received many Nobel Prizes for peace and other awards for saving lives and easing sufferings, but also been favorite target of politicians who suspects or they claim they do in order favor with certain group of voters, and thus UN trying to become a global government. I would like to quote from an ambassador to United Nations from United States of America, Mr. Henry Cabot Lodge in 1954. This organization is created to prevent you from going to hell, and it is not created to take you to heaven. So such was the initial period. And if you look into this, all 75 years of time of this United Nations progress, we can split into two parts, and before 1980s and after 1980s. And before 1980s, we see that the institution was more controversial with the ideas of capitalist countries as well as that of communist countries. After 1980s, it was more with that of the market-oriented superpowers and their dominance and their political issues, which had led to a major economic and political crisis. So when you look into all these things of these 75 years of time, this institution, whether it has achieved or not, it is a question. Recently, I read the University of United Nations came out with a chart called the United Nations System in 21st Century. And the UN they come out with two ideas. They said the UN as a global manager and another one is global council. As a heuristic guide, the project examines what could be or should be the United Nations in next century. One of the greatest challenges facing United Nations is to address the critical task of reinventing the organization to make it credible force in 21st century. The pressing issues of today and for the future, chief among them are revival of nationalism, ethnic cleansing, genocide, unprecedented humanitarian crisis, gross violation of human rights, the degradation of environment, poverty, social inequalities, the spread of HIV and AIDS, drug trafficking, international terrorism, population growth, increasing the levels of employment, and economic migration from south to north demand a strong and effective United Nations adapted to meet its ever-widening agenda. It is therefore necessary to look ahead for indications of significant changes in the political, social, and economic environments to assess as well as in advance as possible what action is needed if the UN is to deal successfully either with resultant crisis or resultant opportunities. What new challenges are likely to emerge in the years ahead? What problems are likely to persist? What reforms can and should be undertaken to enable the UN to effectively respond to current and future challenges? These are just a few of the many complex questions that form the rich research agenda of the United Nations system in 21st century, and this was done by the United Nations University for the 21st century UN. And with these words, what we need to do in future of 21st century, we need to support United Nations and we need to group again in the 100-year also in order to encourage the system organization. And with these words, I come into the last, my area of thanksgiving to these participants. I would like to mention Mr. Dr. Anandakrishnan. When we were celebrating the 50th year, I was there introducing him. I was welcoming him at Chola, and also I participated when he was a vice chancellor in a Pattimandram with Tambaram Rajagopalan, and I met him there in the Anna University. So I thank Ms. Dr. Anandakrishnan for his valuable insights into that of the United Nations and its need and its role of United Nations, etc. I also thank His Excellency T.S. Tirumurthy, who had given a clear and a video lecture on about the India's role and the importance, the relevance of peacekeeping membership, etc. And Mr. T.P. Srinivasan is also given, who had 20 years of experience in UN, and he has given a wide knowledge and issues about the peacekeeping, and he categorically mentioned about India cannot possibly to become a member in the Security Council. And I would like to thank Ms. Ella Gandhi, the granddaughter of Mahatma Gandhi ji, and she was more concerned with that of the United Nations, and more importantly with that of the arms and ammunition, without free arms and ammunition. And like what Gandhi has said, the non-violence attitude, the same should be continued with the United Nations on people. The people should live peacefully and happily, and their standard of living must rise. And so we, on behalf of the Madras Development Society, thank Mrs. Ella Gandhi for her valuable contribution. I also thank the Member of Parliament from London, Mr. Virendra Sharma, for his valuable speech on the Indo-UK relationship, Britain relationship, and also about the United Nations. And I must fail my duty if I don't thank Mr. Jebamalai, who had a personal experience in Sudan, and how he took care of the sweeper girl, and how he promoted the individual contribution, as well as what flaw found in the Sudan UN system. So I thank him, and also Mr. Pannir Selvam, the editor of Hindu, who had given what the nature of gap between the policy and the fulfilling the policies and United Nations. And also, not least one, Mr. Ahmed Al Mukaini from Oman, a public policy analyst. I must thank him for having given a wonderful speech on United Nations and India. And with these words, I thank everyone who had participated in this UN 75th year anniversary. And I must more thank Dr. Sambat, who was the pioneer and instrument in bringing this conference so successfully. And I'll fail my duty if I don't mention Anu Narendran, who had given us a sweet and soft voice, introduce all the speakers in an interesting way. And once again, I say, I thank everyone for their contribution. Thank you very much.